as I was saying, it's the last session, but not the least, because in this we have two interesting presentations coming up and a recording. So, all in all, there is something to look forward to in this. It will be chaired by our president, Dr. Mashelkar. Everybody knows him and about him. Yet I am tempted to quickly point out a certain high points of his illustrious career. Dr. Mashelkar, a renowned scientist, fellow of the Royal Society, and the president, as I said, of PIC, is a former National Research Professor. He has served as the Director General of the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, CSIR, more popularly known, and was also the President of the Indian National Science Academy and the Institution of Chemical Engineers, which is based in the UK. Dr. Mashelkar is on the board of director of several companies. Some of that came out when he was mentioning about his conversation with Mr. Ambani and so on. He is the recipient of the JRD Tata Corporate Leadership Award, Padma Shri, Padma Bhushan, and Padma Vibhushan. That only leaves one more. And I'm sure before long even that would be conferred upon him. We have lost the count of doctorates, both honorary and other, that he has received. 47 at the last count. And soon I think our half a century is not very far away. I can go on, and now you will probably understand when I was mentioning about, as you go higher, your horizon widens and all that, you'll realize that I was not overstating anything. So, sir, may I request you to please chair this session and start the proceedings. Thank you. Thank you.
It has been a fascinating day. Sitting right there, I learned so much. It's very, very inspiring indeed. So I want to thank all those who spoke, all those who participated. I have this interesting task of chairing Vision 2047 for India. I'm 81, so I will not be definitely there when 2047 happens. Secondly, if you see the rate of change that is taking place, it is so extraordinarily rapid that even to predict what will happen in 10 years' time is very difficult. Just imagine the kind of technologies that exist today which did not exist 10 years ago or 5 years ago and were making a difference. Today all the discussion is about ChatGPT and how it is going to revolutionize. Even 4 or 5 years ago we didn't talk about them. So I think it's a very hazardous task to sort of think of the future. But you saw the trajectory during the day and how we can make it better. One can extrapolate from that, but I think in all humility, all that we can do is to give our wish list, if you ask me. For our beloved India, we have to say that India matters to us, we want to matter to India more. And in that spirit, what we can sort of say, that's the second thing. Sir, I was very inspired by your speech, I must say. And that reminded me of something, you keep on learning from everyone. And I learned something from my granddaughter. She was around 5 to 6, Ishwari is her name. And normally in the morning, I would be reading a newspaper, she would be fooling around. I'll be having a cup of tea. And then she was learning alphabets, so I said, Ishwari, let me test your alphabets. So she said, go ahead. So I wrote down D. She was sitting on this side, by the way. So I wrote down D, she said D. I wrote other letters, she's absolutely was perfect in saying. Then I wrote Z. You know what she said? N. I was right. And she was also right. Okay? So it is all a matter of from where you look. Do we have the capacity to look at things from others' perspectives? I think Operation Blue Star could have been avoided if that Z and N sort of existed. I experienced it, by the way. It's very interesting. What happened was that Microsoft and an Indian company had a big dispute. The Indian company was a small one. And then finally it was decided that there should be discussion and mediation. And there were 3 people who were chosen. Narayan Murthy, Anuaga, and me. And finally it fell on me to negotiate. I remember that morning in Mumbai hotel where the Microsoft team came, the Indian team came, and then I narrated this story of ZNN and told the Microsoft guys that look at the limitations of a small company had. In fact, their CEO, by the way, was put in Arthur Road jail for 3 days, and I described to them how it had happened. And also I told this company, look at it from their perspective as a multinational. They have certain norms, etc., etc. And this was around 9 o'clock. I gave this dose and then left. And around 2 to 3, I think between 2 and 3, I got a call. We have sort of settled it. And then somebody said to me that each time we were in a position of confrontation, we said, look what Dr. Mashelkar is, ZNN. And it's very interesting, Surjit. I was on the Microsoft External Research Advisory Board. So I used to go to US in Redmond. And this word had gone there and they started calling it Zen. So I think the point is a very simple one. We can have a far more peaceful world. There is no need for Hamas, Israel, Ukraine, etc. If this simple lesson of looking at things from each other. I thought, inspired by what you said, I thought I will sort of continue with this. What we are going to do is the following. I'm not going to give a sort of big talk, but just a coincidence. Exactly on this day, last week, exactly at this time, almost 3 p.m., India Habitat Center, I talked about Bharat at 100. It's a real coincidence. It was a series of lectures. It was 50th in the lecture series that they had called me. So for me, it's a very interesting thing that I'm chairing Vision 2047, but having talked at Bharat. So only one point I will add in terms of why did I talk about Bharat at 100 rather than India at 100. And Sujit, I was talking to you about my concerns about India flying, rising, pole vaulting, and Bharat, the kind of challenges we talk about. I'm not going to get into statistics because the moment I say 20% are below the poverty line, there will be a challenge in terms of how do you define poverty and so on. So I'm not going to get into that. I'll just narrate a story for 2 minutes once again. I like doing that. You know, from book of your life, you share something, what did you learn, and then take it on from there. So the story is about the future of India is not going to be built by oldies like me. As I said, 4th inning waiting for the call, not from me, but from young people who are 8, 10, 12, 15 now, if we talk about 2047. So what happened was that I have a friend, Uday Gurjar. He happens to be the vice president of Sarupa Vardhini. I happen to be the president, and we look at education of the poor and the rest of it. He brought his grandson, Ved, and his age was 8 years, okay? And this was in 2020, when COVID was at its peak. If you remember, people were dying in ambulances and so on. That was the time he came. And Uday Gujar said something interesting to me. He said, we have a problem with this child. So I said, what is this? He knows everything. So I said, how is knowing everything can be a problem? I said, young man, sit down. What is your favorite subject? He said, all subjects. Confident. Then, since COVID, biology. So I said, let's start with biology. Tell me what is the difference between bacteria and a virus? Perfect answer. Then I raised the bar. I said, I hear there is something called mutation. perfect answer. Then I raised the bar. I said, there is something called spike protein. He didn't give exact answer, but almost. Then we went into DNA. Now what happened was that in my iPad up there is a photograph of mine with Watson. Watson and Crick were the Nobel Prize winners for discovering the structure of DNA, as you remember. So I showed it to him. He couldn't recognize him because he was too old, and I think he must have seen young photographs. So I said, Watson. Immediately, he said, Watson and Crick won the Nobel Prize. Year he mentioned, and also said that there is another lady scientist who should have won it, Rosalind Franklin, because her X-ray diffraction pattern gave the double helical sort of. There was a big dispute at that time. 8-year-old, and not having gone to school for 1 year because of COVID. Then I said, you know so much about Nobel Prizes, so who is the scientist who has won 2 Nobel Prizes? Immediately, Madame Curie, here for what she had won. I said, no. Linus Pauling has also won 2. He said, no, sir. The first one was for science and second one was for peace. 8-year-old. So I got surprised, and Vijay, I asked his father and grandfather, Baba, none of you are scientists, how come you know so much? He said, Google. Google is his guru. Google. We just gave him access to Google. And of course, I told his father that he's using his brain as a storage. He has to use it as an intelligent processor. And therefore, he will require a teacher. In the same week, this is India at 75 or whatever, 73 or whatever it was at that time. In the same week, I read, not few kilometers from where he is, a girl called Shraddha Pol, 15-year-old, committed suicide. Why? Because she did not give online exams. Why? Because she did not have smartphone or any device. Why? Because her poor parents could not afford it. That is Bharat at 75. And they are within few kilometers of each other. So I think we have to think deeply about this. I would not dwell on this subject further, but I think the statistics, because I provided that in my talk, by the way, because while speaking there, what I did was every slide had a reference, by the way, so that there will be no dispute. Because any number you mention, there is a dispute depending upon how you will like to see things. So I gave that reference. And as it turned out, Sujit, and you will know this, that there is an analysis done that during the decade of 61-70, if you see the average share of wealth, then the top 50% had 12.29%. And the top 1% had 11.87%. That means the top 50% and top 1% was always at the same level. Last decade, that 12.29% share has gone down to 6.1%. And the top 1% has gone from 11% to 31%. That is the top 1%. But top 10% is 63%, by the way, actually. So you can see the inequalities that some of you referred to in the morning. That is the problem we are talking about. So when you dream of the future, if Bharat at 100 remains the same as Bharat at 75, with these kinds of inequalities, we can't. So this is something we'll have to deal with in time to come. So these 3 things, whether it is Z equal to N, depending upon the angle that you look at, or India at 75 and Bharat at 75, these 2 kids, one commits suicide and the other is actually sort of flying. We have to bear that in mind. I thought I'll make these opening remarks and then sort of open it up. We have the distinguished speaker, Sri Hardeep Singh Puri, who was already introduced. He is going to join us through his recorded speech. So may I, he has been already introduced, so I will not introduce him twice. Can you please put his message to us on?
International Center for organizing the 8th Annual Conference, the Pune Dialogue on National Security, on 27 and 28 November 2023. I was very much looking forward to joining this event in person. Regrettably, due to unforeseen circumstances, I cannot be with you in person, but I would like to send my best wishes to the PIC team for hosting this very meaningful and productive conference. The PDNS ideates, deliberates, and brings into focus the imperatives of national security. The forum over the last 2 days discusses a wide array of themes and topics to make the nation secure. The first theme, imperatives for high economic growth. The second theme, critical materials, minerals, energy and supply chains. The third theme, understanding descent in hinterland, impact on economic growth. All three themes are critical for making Bharat ek Viksit Desh. By addressing these critical concerns, India can strengthen its national security, ensure economic growth, and maintain a competitive edge in the global technology and defense sectors as compared to its peers. However, it would be incomplete on my part if I do not highlight how we have managed to protect the energy security of 1.4 billion people in India. The Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, under the guidance of the Honorable Prime Minister, has taken a multi-pronged approach to safeguard energy security, recognizing the importance of reliable and affordable access to energy for its economic growth and development. These measures include diversification of supplies, increase of alternate energy sources like biofuels, ethanol, CBG, and increasing exploration and production footprint along with focus on domestic production, and energy targets through electric vehicles and hydrogen. Through such responsive decision-making and policy reforms, India has successfully been able to navigate the energy trilemma, that is, ensuring energy availability, affordability and sustainability, and modulate the effective price of fuels to consumers. While global prices have skyrocketed, prices of energy in India have not increased since 2022, in spite of India importing over 85% of its crude oil requirements and 55% of its natural gas requirements. It is a common fact that economic growth is dependent on energy consumption on account of rapid urbanization and industrialization. This growth energy correlation is evident in India, as it is now the world's third largest energy consumer, third largest consumer of oil, third largest LPG consumer, fourth largest LNG importer, fourth largest refiner, and fourth largest automobile market in the world. Further, 25% of the global energy demand growth between 2020 and 2040 is going to come from India due to our fast-growing economy and demographic dividend. I would therefore like to conclude by saying that the energy security and national security are both inextricably linked. A nation's ability to secure reliable and affordable access to energy is fundamental to its economic prosperity and overall stability, which resonates with the theme for PDNS 2023, Securing India's Growth. Jai Hind.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, the minister couldn't make it in person, but you saw his inspiring message. Now, it's my pleasure to invite Lieutenant General Shamsher Singh Mehta to the dais. Since you did not introduce him, I will introduce, because the discipline that you have set up has to be followed. Yeah, we can't take anybody, any deviation from the excellence that you have set up for processes. So it is my pleasure to sort of introduce him. Informally, I will introduce him in many, many different ways, by the way. He's a great inspiration for all of us. But I will do the formal introduction. Lieutenant General Shamsher Singh Mehta, PVSM, AVSM, and by VSM, was commissioned into the Indian Army in 1962 in 63 Cavalry. He led the only tank column to reach Dhaka on 16 December during the 1971 war for the liberalization of Bangladesh. I think this needs an applause. During his 41 years of service, he served as the military assistant to General K. Sundarji, Assistant Director General Military Operations, Deputy Chief of the Army Staff, and Army Commander, Army Training Command. Before retiring in January 2004 during Operation Parakram, Lieutenant General Mehta held the prestigious appointment of General Officer Commanding in Chief, Western Command. He has been a member of the NSAB, service member of the National Task Force on IT, and member of the Group of Ministers Task Force on the Review of Defense Management. Those of you who attended PDNS last year, you remember his final speech. Actually, he set us all on fire. And all good things have to be repeated. So, General Mehta, we expect not only the repeat, but something that will pole vault even your last speech. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I've always been not inflicted, but enjoyed the generosity of both Dr. Mashelkar, Vijay Kelkar, and other members of the PIC. And today, it's my privilege, they've given me the privilege to say a few words, which they call it. अभी नहीं दिखाना है, हम बताएंगे जब दिखाना। हम बताएंगे आपको। Actually, I don't use slides. My view has always been power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. PowerPoint corrupts completely. So I'm one of those guys who doesn't want to use slides. But there's one I may just have to use for other reasons. It's been a fascinating 10 years to be as part of PIC. It's been a fascinating thing to be able to meet, talk, and understand what you are doing. The lesson that I learned out of this interaction is that in my 40 years in the army, why did we keep ourselves moribund in not exposing ourselves to the outside world and allowing the outside world to expose themselves to us? And therefore we did not grow. And therefore, often you passed away a soldier with a dummy at both the ends, and for some years you enjoyed that impression. But it's not going to work anymore because India now wants to rise to the top of the shack. And if that is the case, it will have to be all hands on board. This morning's presentations are fascinating. I noted a few points. I hope I don't miss some of the important ones that have been made. But the more important thing is that I am not going to take very long, but say a few words. Dr. Mashelkar, I was asking myself that what do you mean by valedictory and what do you mean by sending papers to somebody who's then going to read it and then follow it? So I've decided to change the format for today, with your permission. I am addressing all of you as either Prime Ministers of India or prospective Prime Ministers of India. So what is it that he would like to hear which he can implement? If you give him an almanac, he won't read it. If you give him a file, somebody will... And he doesn't have more than 15 minutes. If you take 17 minutes, he'll pass you off. So I'm going to spend maybe around 15 minutes. I have not timed it. And I'm addressing you as the Prime Minister of India to be either before election or after the election, that you decide. What is it that you would want to know? Mr. Prime Minister, by 2047, since you mean so well for the country, this is what I want to see happen to the common man. By 2047, I want to see 99% of our adult population is minimum high school. Almost all our population is skilled and can work jobs in their highest potential at different levels of skilling. And I talk of skilling at 3 levels. The lowest level, which I called yellow living, then the middle, and then the white collar. We need to skill at all 3 levels. Almost all our population must have access to basic essentials: food, clothing, shelter, freedom, safety, healthcare, sanitation, water, electricity. We don't lose more than a small fraction of our population to communicable diseases and epidemics. We can set up a new business in under 2 days and be able to run it without much hassle. Moving people and goods across the country should be easily done under a day. When people stop being productive due to sickness, old age, and other reasons, we have an effective social safety net to take care of them. Today we have none. And I'm a geriatric. I'll be 80 in 6 months and 6 weeks, so I know what I'm talking about. Anyone from any part of India can call and get access to help in any case, in any emergency. Every part of India is reasonably safe for anyone at any time of the day. There is a rule of law and no culture of fear where everyone can get justice without fear. If you have a vision for India, it can be couched in so many beautiful words. But at the end of it, as one of your subjects, I want this for every man in the street. If this is available to every man in the street, I can assure you we'll be secure. No mother's son will be able to cast an eye upon us, because Kautilya said, as many years ago that he lived, there are different variations, some say 2000, some say 1000. He said 4 types of threats can always bother a nation. First, an internal threat, internally abetted. If this is available, that internal threat cannot get abetted internally because everybody is happy. Second, an internal threat externally abetted. Khalistan, the point that you were raising. It's the second type of threat. If people are happy, it will not happen. The third, an external threat internally abetted. And an external threat externally abetted. If you want to take care of the security of the country, if this is in place, all these 4 will be taken care of. And all these 4 can only be taken care of if in the next 25 years we have unimpeded economic growth. Therefore, what I was telling Ajit the other day, if there is one campaign, Mr. Prime Minister, India needs to launch a campaign of economic growth over the next 24 years. Whatever you do under the campaign will be battles. There will be the army wanting money, the navy wanting money, road wanting money. Those are battles, those you can win and lose. But when those proposals comes to you, you ask yourself, the officer presenting it to you, how does it impact economic growth? If the answers he is giving to you is not answering this question, don't approve the proposal. However, that is an academic exercise. What will happen in the environment is what you and I know. You and I don't know. So what is it that we need to do in the environment? In the next 24 years, we need to A, preserve the peace. B, win the war before the war. And 3, if push comes to shove, then all hands on board, comprehensive national power, we must beat the enemy to death. Can all that happen in the first year of 24 years? No. But as we slowly move along a path and everybody has a vision that this is where we want to go, it's going to happen. But how do you preserve the peace? Who disturbs the peace? Internal threats and internal threats externally abetted. Societal harmony is key to ensuring that the internal is taken care of by the internal, by factor when your population begins to feel that you're moving in that direction. That's the problem that internal threats are going to create. There's Naxalism. Naxalism is not your campaign. Naxalism is a battle that needs to be won. Will it be won in one day? No. As soon as the Naxalites begin to see development, you will see it will come down. You take a map of India today, draw a vertical from Kanpur south. That vertical will go a little west of Chennai. All your metros are west of that line. The only metro east of that line is Chennai, is Calcutta. Where is east and where is west? And Mr. Prime Minister, you have a foreign policy here, we're looking east, but you're not looking at your own east. And where is the Naxal belt? In the line that draws from Kanpur and goes down to Chennai. That's the Naxal belt. That is dissatisfaction. Therefore, this is something that can be or must be taken care of. Unless, and I repeat again, unless the campaign is economy, and unless every man is working for economy, it will not be possible to move in that direction. So, maintain the peace. Internal, by ensuring the societal order continues to remain stable, not polarized. Secularism is a key value of our constitution. I, me, my don't matter. I was telling these children the other day in the Gokhale institution. I said, please spell illness. I-L-L-N-E-S-S. Please spell wellness. W-E-L-L-N-E-S-S. When I becomes we, the illness becomes wellness. We have to learn the I, me, my does not matter. It has to be we, us and ours. There is no question saying the government has not done it, the corporate has not done it, society has not done it. Think tanks should be able to come back with solutions which take everybody on board to make sure that the good begins to happen. As I say that, I go to the point that is linked with that. Win the war before the war. How do you win the war before the war? You win the war before the war if there's a resolve that you are going to move in a direction which the other man is beginning to see. Nobody wants to lose face against a fight against you. We are the largest size in the world, third largest economy. We have to win the war before the war. We can only win the war before the war if we get it together. Let's take industry. If industry and the union don't work together, this is private, this is public, this is private, this is public, you're not going to succeed. Somebody in the morning talked of PPP will have to be done. Who will make the investment and who will do the research? If you have to win that, there is no way that this thing is not going to happen together. Coupled with that, and along with that, and this is important, the citadel never falls except from within. And the within has so many connotations, and we have seen so many of them this morning, that they will all have to be addressed by you and your team to make sure that we remain, as we always were, united. Now, I get on to the next part of the external threat. The external threat, Prime Minister, the visible external threat is Pakistan and China. In my book of rules, in my understanding, Pakistan is now sitting in the lap of China. If Pakistan sits in the lap of China, China will not allow Pakistan to resolve anything with India no matter what you do. It's not in their interest. If you resolve matters with them, then China gets hit. Therefore, don't think of Pakistan. Think of China. If you can handle China, Pakistan will get handled. What do we do with China? China often barks at every forum whenever they do anything irrational. They don't know, oh, kisne kar diya, we don't know who has done it, we'll see what has happened, and Gautam will tell you this more than I can even think of. They make it look as if somebody else's blame. I think time has come for us to be able to pay back in equal measure without escalating it. An example not to be quoted, you come and hit me at Galwan, I will hit you somewhere else. You came in 1 kilometer, I will go in 1.5 kilometers. If I go to Galwan and keep addressing Galwan, he won the battle. He started it and you are reacting. There is no need to do it. The day he begins to feel that you are moving towards a plan, and the plan is economic growth, in the world market you will find more friends, in the global south you will find more friends, and they will insist that no other chap misbehaves with you. And today we are in a sweet spot. Why are we in a sweet spot? Of course, because of what India has done so far and come to the level where we are today. But we are in the sweet spot. Because no matter what China says about America says, today both of them need you. China needs you because they don't want you to get closer to America. America needs you because you represent democracy and all the values that go with democracy, the good and the bad. If you don't exploit the sweet spot in doing economic growth, you will end up being an also-ran. We don't want to be on top of the pole, but we want to be part of the pole. We can be part of the pole if a common man is satisfied. A common man will be satisfied if there are areas in which we address. We cannot address if we don't grow. And if all policy that comes to you, Mr. Prime Minister, in relation to agriculture, infrastructure, water, interwater dispute, please check against that. Is there any economic growth taking place? Or is internal discord not being unnecessarily shaken? If you can do this, the way you talk and the way you meet people and the way you address the world will be at your feet. Let me just make one or two more points. And now, like Dr. Mashirkar, I'll give you an example of what happened to me when I went in the World Economic Forum. I attended a World Economic Forum at DGCII. And it's very customary that in the evening, groups of people meet. So 4 or 5 of the top 500 companies, India was in the season at that time. I mean, that was the rage in World Economic Forum around 2008, 2009. So they called me also to have an evening with them. One of my both advantages and disadvantages is that I don't drink. Although services were always made for only being drunkards, and I 40 years in the army and I never drank. So I joined them. After the first time I realized that no matter which color you are, which country you belong to, after the 4th or 5th drink you talk. So I'm listening, carefully listening. So I think it's the number 3 company in the world at that time. He says, General, do you think you're independent? I said, what? 1947 we got it? They said, no, you didn't get it. 47, that's only on paper, on the ground you're not independent. I said, why? He said, General, you're fooling yourself. I said, why? He said, do you know, my company has 50,000 of your guys in Bangalore. They work for me, they don't work for me. That is my colony in your independent India. Because you don't have the capacity to exploit their talent. India is a country of untapped talent. And we are scared of your youth because when we see them in bits and pieces in our company, they are everywhere. This was in 2008. By the time we reached 2023, there's hardly any company in the world which our guys are not leading. The Altman has to be sacked, Nadella had to hire him. It's happened. We need to tap our own talent. And to be able to do that, there's a fundamental error that I picked up when I was young, and I think I made a mistake. When I say I made a mistake, I didn't know enough. And I don't want the young people to unnecessarily follow suit, whether in the services or in the corporate world. And that is, we are told what we think and we think we are thinking. We don't know how to think. The point Ramesh made about, could we not ascertain that if you're disturbing these people, this will happen? The Lord didn't say so. Therefore, if the young generation can challenge the thinking, and that is where dissent comes in, that is the ability to say, why not? If you can get into that level, there is no way that you will not be able to capture the world. And I think this is not an example for this gathering of intellectuals, but I will still say it. I belong to a generation of goalkeepers. Our goalkeeping tradition was, don't let a goal to be scored. No goal means a drawn match. A drawn match means victory. So what we did very well as goalkeepers was, we bonded well, families remained together. Today's generation is not goalkeepers. Today's generation is all centre forward. Everybody wants to score a goal. They have no time. And for humanitarian assistance to a neighbor who was under genocide and rape. We did that and we came away. We didn't stay on, we were not occupiers. And so there are 3 or 4 lessons that I've mentioned many times in the PIC, but there are some new people here. We prove to the world and prove to all our neighbors, many of them are still smarting under the umbrella of with this power and that power, that democracy is better than military rule. Humanism is better than barbarism. Liberation is better than occupation. And the ability to do something which is different from what your enemy is anticipating is how the armed forces reached Dhaka. Was it a one-man show? The Ministry of External Affairs arranged a meeting with the Russians and we had a treaty. All hindsight and all thought through. There was no plan to go to Dhaka. We went. And we wanted to go. Nobody in the chain said no. So, incredible India. Incredible India. As we often talked about in so many of our tourism manuals. Incredible India is invincible India whenever we are Team India. We must learn to be Team India. We don't do very well in that. 11th Tendulkar will not win a match. We don't know how to win a campaign. We can win battles. When you win 10 times and lose the 11th time, you won the battle, lost the campaign. You must know that you've done that. Army will win a battle, industry will win a battle, some scientists will win a battle, but we have to win the campaign. We sit in the crucible of understanding that if the campaign is to be won, there should be something like this is the end result. This laundry list is not good enough. I'm sure you can add 40 things more to it. But where are we going to move and what is the benefit for? And that is what we need to consider. And if that happens, what is it that I just need to say after I said so far? And in the 3 presentations in the morning, education came up. You mentioned it. Cash transfer came up, which is an improvement. Delimitation came up, which is valuable. PPP and R&D came up, which is important. Energy, private investment in research and development came up, which is important. The 3 points that was made by Ajit about the purpose of security is to project, he said project, pressurize and protect. Project, protect and pressurize. All that will happen if we get our act together. Can we get our act together? I have no doubt that we can get our act together. And what therefore should we be in a position to articulate? We can write huge number of papers. Mr. Chairman, we just need to meet the right people who make a decision and tell them in so many words what we can do. The longer we make it, the more elaborate we make it, the more thinking we make it, the more we'll get confused. And nobody has the time for that. I don't think I need to say anything else, and I don't think I have any other thing that I'm not sharing, which I thought I should share with you. And I said that the other day in a paper I wrote in the Tribune. Please, we need to understand that if India has to be on the third pole, I'm not contesting us being between A and B. If you're going to be the third pole in 2047, we have to understand that our geography is not our strategic boundary. Our strategic boundary starts from the Pamir Knot and goes to the Malacca Straits. From the Pamir Knot, you draw a vertical, it goes to East Africa. You go eastward, you go towards Malacca Straits. You go north, you take care of Tibet. This is our strategic boundary. Anything that happens here should concern us. Anything that happens here, we should be able to take care of. Whether we do it by preserving the peace, or winning the war before the war, or being prepared to fight, what we have to finally learn is, when push comes to shove, in any discipline of life, please act with your fist and not with your fingers. Fist, not fingers. And all of us are going to be fist. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you very much for listening to me with patience. I hope it made some sense. Thank you, sir.
What an inspiring speech. I think it deserves a second round of applause. Thank you. I'm going to open it up for discussion, comments, suggestions, reflections, and so on. I would not like it to be turned into a Q&A, because the people who are sitting here don't have answers to all the questions that you will be asking. I think let it be a session of introspection and honest introspection. And where do we go? I have one suggestion. You know, Sir Francis Bacon had once said that when you want to achieve results that have not been achieved before, it is an unwise fancy to think that they can be achieved by using methods which have not been used before. What it means is that we have to rethink, reimagine. If we keep on doing the same thing, we will not achieve that objective. In fact, Einstein also had said we can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking that we used when we created them. So, have to think differently in terms of how do we move. So I open it up for discussion. We are doing well on time, so don't worry. As I said, it must be 4:10 now or something like that. So we have time, and let's begin the process. Then I'll make some concluding remarks after learning from you. Thank you.
You know, you just said we have to think what you've not thought before, etc. So I had written down, we can do stuff today we could never even dream of before. By that I mean that the issues that face us today are very similar in many ways to the issues since our independence, whether it's growth, whether it's poverty, whether it's democracy, whether it is secularism, no matter what topic you consider, we can do a lot more today. And that is, and how can we do a lot more today? By, using technology. That is what can create many more checks and balances than have ever been possible before. The other part, and this is for general, and since you said, sir, that this is more a matter of discussion, just this morning I was having breakfast with Ajit at Gokhale Institute, and we're talking about the Constitution. and in particular about affirmative action versus reservations. And, the library is full of constitutional debates on that question. And part of what we can dream of today of doing, which maybe we didn't, obviously it was debated, and therefore there were a lot of leaders who thought we should go for affirmative action. And I think we should be part of growing up and part of nation building and part of doing things that we never did before, out of the box thinking. Is it time for us, and I know that Bajpai started to think about a new constitution or revised constitution or whatever. The Indian constitution has about 125 corrections or what is it, amendments. The US Constitution, I think, has 18 or something. And we have, and I remember writing an article or thinking about that, according to the Supreme Court, maybe not the US, maybe not our Constitution, a woman can be half pregnant. And this is on the issue of reservations. So I think, look, reservations is tied very strongly with equality of opportunity. I think we need to have a very constructive debate about whether we want equality of outcomes or we want equality of opportunity. Because as you mentioned and I hate to differ with you, but this wealth inequality data is better than, not even better than garbage. But we can do that. But that doesn't mean that we don't have inequality. Wealth, for example, the whole story of wealth for India and for developing countries is education, is human capital. And that has to do with equality of opportunity. Then maybe there is, even after you give equality of opportunity, there will be inequality. It's absolutely inevitable that there will be inequality. But then that's where redistribution comes in. The reason the world has forever progressive income taxation is because there is more than an implicit belief that those who have more should help those who have less. So I want to dream of, and we can do it because we now have information, we have technology, we know who the poor are or who don't have equality of opportunity. We just need to think that, look, we have, the other thing that I don't agree with a lot of people, we have achieved a lot. And you yourself said, but many others don't, and independent of political background. That's what I said in the morning. This is what we do together. Let's not bring politics into this. Let's bring ideas into making us achieve. Exactly, it's a great list, and I think as a concluding comment, I would say, in my mind, I also probably won't be there in 47. But in my mind, it's almost impossible. We don't get to many, if not all, of the things that you mentioned, except there's one about something about fear. And, we have the example of all the countries of the world who are much, much more advanced economically, education-wise, and everything else, but haven't quite. So I think of all the list There's one that about without fear is, I think, maybe more difficult. But anyway.
How we can make India more prosperous is by utilizing our human capitals. Just 2 days back, a few days back, there's a news that that Israel wants 1 lakh skilled Indians from India because they're busy fighting the Hamas and everybody. And similarly, Taiwan, since it also wants 1 lakh skilled Indians there. So. Now, what I'm trying to say is that the Western world today is acutely short of manpower, so because of many reasons, zero population growth, etc. And their growth entirely depends upon migration, sir, right from America to England and all. If we export good manpower, sir, we can have more Kamala Harris, Rishi Sunaks, then Leo Varadkar, and then so many CEOs are there of Fortune 500 companies, sir, because it is seen that our human capital works best when it goes outside India, sir. Your comments?
No, I'd just thinking on the very profound address by General Mehta, and then also additional comments by friend Surjit. What I'm going to say may sound trite in some ways, but it just, that thought has been happening for some time, but now it hit me just now. I think your wonderful list will not happen unless we learn and we request the Prime Minister to tell us how to do, each one of us, getting over what is this disease of otherness. As long as othering people, I'm afraid none of it is going to happen. So starting with stopping otherness is what, to my mind, fundamental precondition for everything what's said here or what you have listed there. And that's, I think it's within our heritage. It's not something, I'm not saying something which is not said by other people in our own sort of long history. So just capturing that, genuinely imbuing it, internalizing it, is to my mind sufficient condition to achieve what we want. But as long as that persists, I'm afraid we're going to have a continuous strife and struggle.
Listening to all the views since this morning, including the last one, sir, where General Mehta, sir, you mentioned about this is being the generation of centre forwards while we were the goalkeepers. It actually set me thinking about two things. One is, in our own mind, at least the current generation, and I hope the new generation, which is represented by the students sitting at the back, in their mind they should remove, I mean, after all, when we are talking about goalkeepers and centre forwards, we are talking about a football ground or a hockey ground which has got markings, which sets the limits. I'm saying remove those markings and let not our minds work within given parameters. Let the minds be open and let there be no boundaries to innovation and initiative. That's one. Secondly, a matter of perspective reminded me of a conversation I was having with, when I was still in service, and a course mate of mine happened to be the Chief of Naval Staff. I think names are not important, but talking to him, I said, you know what? I think our Navy needs to be built up and our maritime strength needs to be built up. So I won't grudge it if part of the defense budget is sort of, the greater share goes to the Navy. He said, why do you say so? I said, if you just turn you see, in our minds, we have a perspective right from our school days. We've seen the map of India with Kashmir on top, Sri Lanka in the south. And we have this great landmass of China and Pakistan, and we are obsessed with defense of India as being land-based. I said, you turn the thing around, and all you see is a mass of sea with, Sri Lanka on top and Kashmir down below. Suddenly, the importance of the land doesn't seem to be so much. So if you change the perspective, the Z and N story, sir, is the same thing. You just turn things around and they start looking differently. If only we can do that in our thinking, lot more opportunities are likely to open.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sure. Appropriately, the person who is going to create 2047, I mean, India at 100, is speaking to us. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so sir, for the past few months I was wondering, like before coming on to the question, I just wanted to give a brief background. So in the second session, Colonel Anurag sir mentioned that 20% of the designers are in India, but there is only manufacturing done in India, and as sir said, India is just untapped potential. So we are a pool of untapped potential. So why is that, sir, that all the designing, all the innovation happens at Cupertino and Apple's base, and all the manufacturing is done in India, and 45% of the profit is made by Apple sitting there just designing the thing, and we get only 8% of the profit manufacturing the iPhones. So is it because there is some cultural issue, like the mindset or the culture of the Indian entrepreneurs is such that we don't innovate, or we just do the manufacturing that is done by or innovated design by Americans or the different people? Is there any mental or like the mindset problem, or are there any real challenges faced by the entrepreneurs in India?
Very good question. I think, yes.
Thank you. I just wanted to reflect on one point which I thought that maybe we didn't discuss as a group a lot, is the impact of social media on generally our society. One of the things that I've realized, and sir mentioned that we are now like from goalkeepers to on the front side, we would want to have goals. So what is also happening in the age of social media, and seeing there's a lot of this interest in instant gratification. So you want results tomorrow, and that the patience is currently missing. And sir, given that I work in the field of energy transition, many of these targets are the problems of the next generation or tomorrow. So 2040, 2050, 2060, 2070. And sometimes because this is problem of the future, the many individuals who are at times responsible for taking decisions, it's very difficult for even us to connect and say that, okay, if these are the necessary building blocks so that we can reach where we should in the next 50 years. And I think that is, if this will continue, and I'm sure there's no one problem, because so you already mentioned I, me, my, and compared to the importance of we, then the role of institutions become very, very important. How do we, at least while we are in multiple institutions, working with multiple institutions, ensure that the institution is strengthened and does not necessarily fail or win just because of the presence of an individual? And only then, at least in the energy transition, because sir, at national, sub-national, district level, we'll only be able to achieve, at least on the renewables, without every one of them coordinating with each other, from land approvals to, of course, setting up those projects, tendering out. We're seeing these challenges on the ground. And we are talking about very small numbers, and we have to reach 100 times of that. And while this is of one sector, I'm sure the problems are similar in other sectors. So I just wanted to highlight that the role of institutions and the strengthening of institutions even becomes more important as we secure our India's economic growth. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. Let me give my closing remarks so that I keep my promise of finishing well before 5. I will not talk for long. I think first, taking up from what you talked about, in Gautam's book, when he talked about India at 2030, the headline that he picked from what I had written, which he used, was that we will not be just consumer of knowledge, but creators of knowledge. Am I right? That was your headline that you picked. I'll give you a recent instance. For example, there is what is called as the Queen Elizabeth Prize of Engineering. It's £1 million prize, considered as a Nobel Prize in Engineering. And it goes to technologies which has made all the difference. It has changed the world. Like the very first award went to Tim Berners-Lee, who created Internet. That changed the world. World Wide Web, that changed the world. GPS, that changed the world. And this time it went to solar Martin Green's technology, passive emitter rear cell, which pushed the efficiency from 14 to 15% to something like 27 to 28%. Today we are enjoying the benefits of solar because now it has become affordable. So things like that. I've been on this jury for last 6 years, and I often wonder, when are we going to create the breakthroughs? All right. So India at 2047 should be one who should belong to that category. We do well by using, like internet. Mobile internet has changed India. All right. And with the digital public platform, you see how the world has changed and all that, etc. So you are wonderful users, but it will be a great matter of pride if we were to do that. And that is where we created programs like New Millennium Indian Technology Leadership Initiative. Leader was critical. Mr. Yashwant Sinha, who was the finance minister, called me, and I think this was the year 2000, and he said, 28th February, I'm reading out the budget. Give me something very exciting. Sir, how much time? He said 30 minutes. And I remember dictating New Millennium Indian Technology and leadership in capital letters. Not following, but sort of leading. And we created programs. Today, Ravi Pandit was there. He has created a fuel cell bus today, which has been already commercialized. The announcement will come. Does 400 kilowatt, $400 per kilowatt, not 1,000 to 1,200, ahead of the rest of the world. 95% are indigenous components. Fantastic technology. Covered by patents and so on and so forth. How did it happen? Because in this program, Surjit, when nobody talked about hydrogen and fuel cell, that was 2002, we started a program, basically. Because Indian industry had always worked where markets were certain, technology was certain. We jumped into an area where markets were uncertain, technologies were not known. Nobody talked about it, and today India has one of world's base. That can happen when we want to not just leapfrog, pole vault, or whatever that you want to do, and have an aspiration. And here is an example that has been actually done. So that is that point. The point that you made about I, we, and the rest of it, that's a real Indian challenge, very frankly. Somebody, there is a talk I had given, it is called Mind versus Mindset. How Indian mind is taking us into the 21st century, and how Indian mindset is backing us up. Several years ago, I wrote about that. So somebody asked me, what is one Japanese plus one Japanese? I said, obviously 2. He said, no, it is 11. And then he asked me, what is one Indian plus one Indian? I said 2. He said, no, 0. They neutralize each other. And that has been a problem. There is a lesson that I learned from my childhood. As most of you know, I was born in a very poor family, etc., etc. I will not repeat the story. But I remember I went to a municipal school, and after the 7th standard, the primary school, I had to go to secondary school. And for going to secondary school, uniform, this, that, and the other, I was barefoot all the time, but I had to wear shoes for going to school, and uniform, and so on. My mother required 21 rupees. And she took 21 days to get it, borrowing it from one housemaid who was her friend. It was her saving, basically. And by that time, all the admissions in great schools were closed. Wilson High School and Aryan High School, those of you who know Chikitsak High School and so on. And I went to poor school. And that was a great breakthrough in my life. Because that poor school had rich teachers. One of them was Principal Bhave, who taught us physics. And he did not believe in chalk and talk. Learning by doing, seeing, and so on and so forth. So one day he did an experiment where he had a piece of paper, he had this convex lens, and he wanted to show us how to find the focal length. He moved it up and down. When the brightest spot came, he said, this is the focal length. But he kept it for some time, and the paper burnt. That was a warm moment in my life, because he said, like this, if you focus your energy, you can achieve anything. So I got 2 things. One, philosophy of life, focus. Second, science is so fantastic, I will become a scientist. That moment, there is a warm moment in everybody's life. But as I grew, I learned more lessons, Surjit. This convex lens, what does it do? Sun's rays are parallel. And what is the property of parallel lines? They never meet. What does convex lens do? It makes them meet. Look at India. Race, religion, language. What we require is a convex lens leadership. What does concave lens leadership do? Take them apart. So the answer to your question, moving from I to we require such convex lens leadership. Otherwise, we can't make it 2047. Very clear. I have my wish list, which I'll give you in sort of just 5 minutes. I think first, I would I've written it down as Santulit, the India of my dreams. Santulit, Suvidya, Samruddha, Sushasit, Surakshit, and that is what we are discussing, Susanskrit, and finally Swanandi, happy. I'll say a couple of lines about each one of these because they are generic, but they are eternal, so as to say. The first is Santulit, balanced. I think we have to balance environment, ecology, economy, equity, ethics. There is no question. And this transition we are talking about is not going to be easy, by the way. It's very clear. Because we talk about just transition, that just is where society doesn't get damaged, economy doesn't get damaged, and still we sort of move. I think that's a very, very important thing. We talk about balancing because of the inequalities and so on and so forth. But you know, I'm a crazy guy. People call me a dangerous optimist. I like to see an India at 47 as a casteless society, as a classless society. We don't know what India today is. There was a heartbreaking report. There was this Chanadasar community, all right, and this community in Karnataka, the husband and wife took their 2-year-old child, okay, their scheduled tribe community, Hanuman temple, and they stood outside because they were not allowed to enter. And the child, 2-year child, left mother's hand and ran into the temple. You know what they do? They imposed a fine of 25,000 rupees for purification of the temple. Let's face some realities. It is not just income inequality, Surjit. It is this. Actually, we have to be serious about this. All right, we can't aspire to be a great nation if this is the case. Suvidya, we talked about education being the future, but right to education has been given. But now right education, because the word is changing so rapidly, and right way of education. You are spot on, sir, when you talk about Indian talent. I am a great believer in Indian talent. Like we were discussing during lunch, when we talk about economic growth, for US it took place because of roads and railways. For Britain it was textiles. For Denmark it was milk and milk products. For Sweden it was timber and timber products. And for Middle East it was oil. What is the oil for India? Oil for India. And somebody said rare earths for China. You remember? It is Indian talent, so as to say, you know. But there is an interesting challenge, Vijay. As you know, I'm a traveling salesman for India and always try to. So there was this Ranganathan Memorial Lecture that I gave in Chennai several years ago. And our C. Subramaniam and M.S. Swaminathan, both were there. One was chief guest, another was guest of honor. And then I said, you have made green revolution, etc. But do you know another revolution that is coming up? That another revolution, I said, is grey revolution. And at that time the number was like this, now it has changed. I said, do you realize that 0.06% of Indian population of 26.5-year average age contributes to 1/3 of our export? I was talking about IT and IT services. Vijay, M.S. Swaminathan got up at the end. He was to give his concluding remarks. And he says, I don't think Mashilgar knows what's happening at the ground. Because he's talking about grey revolution Great evolution requires brain development, and he described how malnourished women are giving sort of birth to children whose brains do not develop, and they are in huge numbers. Stunting, we talked about stunting, and you elaborated some of the reasons, etc., etc. What we talked about 20 years ago, there's still a challenge. Let's face it, basically. So how do we, this is for every good news, there is another sort of news that worries. I mean, Mars orbiter mission, we are very proud, it's moving, but इसकी शादी नहीं होती है क्योंकि उसको मंगल है. Mangalayaan is up there. Scientific temperament we talk about, etc. This duality of India on the way to 2047 sort of we have to reduce. Then I talked about Samruddha, and this was all about economic growth actually. And I also talked about the inequalities in income that have sort of come up. But the opportunities that you talked about, so I won't dwell with it. So we are right on the spot as far as this is concerned. Like my guru, Vijay Kelkar says, put your head down for next 20 years, do double-digit growth, and then look at what's happening. India will be very different. We don't do that, no? Are we focused on that? Or are we sort of, that converging and focusing on one issue? We are not doing that. We are sort of diverging. I think that's very important. Sushasit, of course, the governance is extremely critical, consensus-based. I think there must be a space for differing opinions, open minds, transparency, accountability, etc. Institutions that we talked about. If the institutional strength vanishes, we'll be gone, actually. And there are deep concerns about that. Surakshit, yes, that is our Pune dialogue on national security. And as the Commandant Army Chiefs said yesterday, there are different dimensions. Today we are looking at the economic direction. There is a food security direction, huge challenges there, the energy we talked about, the health and so on. Then Susanskrit, of course. Yesterday only we celebrated, not celebrated, we had Dilip Padgaonkar Memorial Oration. And within that we are talking about Dilip, and he was liberal, and he talked about tolerance and so on and so forth. So I think when we talk about, we should be proud of our culture, our heritage, but equally respect others' culture and heritage. I think that's extremely important. So finally, Swanandi, when J.R.D. Tata got Bharat Ratna, Vijay, what he said, yes, I want India to be an economic superpower, but even more than that, I want to see a happy India. And that happiness is not just smile on the faces of few. It is the happiness on the faces of 1.4 billion. I don't know what will be our population in 2047, and so on and so forth. And the peace both within as well as outside. I think that's extremely important. So my small wish list is a Santulit Bharat, a Suvidya Bharat, a Samruddha Bharat, a Sushasit Bharat, a Surakshit Bharat, Susanskrit Bharat, Swanandi Bharat. I won't be on the earth, but watching such a Bharat from up there. Thank you very much.
As is customary at Pune International Center and part of PDNS, I would now request our President to kindly felicitate the participants, the chairpersons and the speakers, that is, who actually spared the time and effort to be here with us and to enlighten us. To begin with, may I call upon Dr. Surjit Bhalla. May I request Shri Gautam Chikarmani to please come forward. Shri Rishabh Jain. Srimati Janvi Tripathi. Shri Ramesh Inder Singh. And of course, a round of thanks since they are not here physically present. Dr. Ajit Ranade, Dr. Ravi Pandit, both of whom are members of PIC in any case. Colonel Anurag Avasthi had to leave early, and so did Pradyot Haldar. So in absentia, thanks to them also. Praveen Swami, I hope he gets well. He's stuck in London, I'm told, with a lung infection. But thanks to him and good wishes to him. That only leaves the Honorable Minister. And as and when he can make it convenient to come here, we'll felicitate him separately. Most of all, thank you to all of you. The one thing I'm carrying back from here is a validation of the theme. We thought securing India's economic growth was the most important thing that we needed to tackle in this PDNS, and I, as the convener, feel validated after listening to all of you. Thank you very much, both to the presenters and to the audience. Thank you very much.
Dr. Mashelkar, Dr. Kelkar, General Patankar, General Mehta. So thank you very much for this very inspiring event. And like all the previous PDNSs, this too was one of the most thought-provoking and one of the most inspiring. And Dr. Mashelkar, thanks to you, we have been pole vaulting throughout the day. And I'm sure all of us are going to carry this term back with us, and it's going to become a part of our vocabulary. So we are grateful to the Chief of the Army Staff, General Manoj Pandey, for his illuminating talk yesterday, and to the Southern Command Army Commander, Lieutenant General Ajay Kumar Singh, for hosting us yesterday and for further strengthening the bond between the PIC and the Southern Command through multiple engagements of this kind. So thanks to Brigadier Ashok Rana for working out the details with our team at the PIC. So this conference focused on securing India's economic growth, which is of paramount importance, as we all are in agreement after this conference. And this theme was finalized by General Patankar and the PDNS core group in close consultation with Policy Perspectives Foundation and Observer Research Foundation, our partners in this conference. So PPF and CAS, the Center for Advanced Strategic Studies, have collaborated with the PIC throughout the years, and this is the first of our joint events with the ORF. And for this, we wish to thank ORF President Dr. Samir Saran for his visit to Pune in the last few months, and to PIC President Dr. Raghunath Mashelkar for making this possible. So as you would have seen, PIC places a lot of importance to involving young scholars in its activities. And this year, a curtain raiser paper writing competition for postgraduate and doctoral students at Gokhale Institute marked a new precedent at the PIC. So this involved a lot of effort, and we wish to thank Vice Chancellor Dr. Ajit Ranade, PIC's founder member Shri Vikas Deshmukh, General Shami Mehta, Air Marshal Bhushan Gokhale, Registrar Colonel Kapil Jodh, the Southern Command, and of course General Patankar for this. Many of the speakers and the session chairs travelled to Pune specially for this event, and we are indeed grateful to you. Professor Surjit Bhalla, Mr. Gautam Chikarmane, Rishabh Jain, Colonel Anurag Avasthi, Ms. Janvi Tripathi, Shri Pradyot Haldar, Shri Ramesh Inder Singh, and Dr. Ravi Pandit connected online from Europe. And indeed, we are grateful to all of you for taking the time out and sharing your deep insights at this conference. We owe a big thanks to General Patankar, the convener of this conference, who took enormous efforts in stitching all the loose ends together along with team PDNS, Geeta Hosmane, Pranit Chukla, Koina, Kiran, Tejas, Dinesh, and my entire team at the PIC office, our trusted associates and Pride Hotel for helping us make this event a success. Finally, we cannot forget to thank all of you, dear participants, for attending this conference and enriching it with your active participation. We wish you a very good evening, and I declare this conference as closed. Thank you.